Hello and welcome to a lecture for the 16th Annual Kościuszko Chair Conference and the 4th Oskar Halecki Symposium. This year's virtual conference and speakers will focus on the topic of the Intermarium and Trimarium, Concepts and New Realities. Today's joint virtual symposium is organized by the Institute of World Politics and the Oskar Halecki Institute in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the passing away of Professor Oskar Halecki. For those who are new, IWP is a graduate school of national security, intelligence, and international affairs. We offer a doctoral program, 7 master's degree programs, including 2 online MAs, and 18 certificates of graduate study. If you're interested in learning more about us, please feel free to visit us at iwp.edu. On behalf of IWP, I'd like to thank all of our supporters who make IWP events possible. Today, we'll be hearing from Professor Marek Kornat. Marek Kornat is a historian. He graduated with his PhD from the Jagiellonian University in Kraków in 2000 and subsequently obtained the title of Professor of Humanities in 2015. His scholarly activity focuses on the history of Polish diplomacy and international relations in the 19th and 20th centuries, as well as the issue of Second Polish Republic. He also deals with the history of Polish political thought, the historiography of totalitarian regimes, and the origins and significance of the Sovietology. Since 2011, he has been employed by the Institute of History of the Polish Academy of Sciences as head of the chair of the 20th century history. Since 2008, he has also been lecturing at the Cardinal Stefan Wyszyński University in Warsaw. He has delivered lectures at foreign research centers, including Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique in Paris, Herm Institute at Columbia University in New York, and the Institute for Wissenschaften und Menschen in Wien, as well as Europäische Institute in Mainz. He has been granted scholarships by the Foundation of Polish Sciences, the D. Brzezinski Foundation, the Kościuszko Foundation, and the British Academy. He is the author of 10 books and over 300 articles concerning the above issues. Please welcome Professor Marek Kornat.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will be speaking today on Professor Oskar Halecki, one of the most important figures in Polish historiography in the 20th century. I think that there are generally 3 reasons of such a state of matter. First of all, Halecki belongs to the most recognized personalities of Polish historiography in the world. He was devoted ambassador of Polish historical sciences abroad. Secondly, Halecki tried to combine 2 fields of research. I mean, Polish history, of course, especially modern Polish history, and secondly, the European common history, especially the history of the Church. And last but not least, Halecki was not only a political historian, the historian of government, historian of legal institutions, historians of the Church, historian of diplomacy, but first of all, he was the historical thinker. He had Christian philosophy of history. He was devoted partisan of the Christian idea of man and Christian idea of history. Let me say some words on his biography in the early years and next in the last years of Habsburg monarchy and in the independent Poland. Halecki was born in 1891 in the family of Austrian military Oskar Alois Halecki, who was employed in the Austro-Hungarian army as a general field marshal, and he was probably Germanized, but he rediscovered Polish origins, and this was very important for his son Oskar, who became a renowned historian. Mother of Halecki was an Croatian aristocrat, Leopoldina Delimanic, and I think that in this family the Catholic confession was very important for the outlook, for the political and social vision of the world. The family of Haleckis was recognized in the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Some of the representatives of this family obtained dignitaries in the position of dignitaries in the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. The young Oskar Halecki obtained until the 10th year only domestic education. After this period, he enters the gymnasium in Vienna, gymnasium of Fathers Benedictines. It was named Schotten Gymnasium, and he obtained education in this school between 1101 and 1909. 8 years of classical gymnasium in Austria. After this time, he decided to study history. He entered at the Jagiellonian University. His choice was history. It was at the historical faculty. Halecki studied for 4 years, since 1909 to 1913, and this was the intensive period in Halecki's life. Especially, he listened to the lectures of renowned professors of the Kraków University. Let me mention 2 names especially. First of them, it was Professor Wacław Sobieski. Professor Wacław Sobieski was the key figure of Polish modern history taught at the Jagiellonian University. And second of them was Stanisław Krzyżanowski, who lectured so-called auxiliary sciences of historical science at the Kraków University. In 1913, it is just before the outbreak of the First World War, Oskar Halecki passed the exams, doctoral exams, and he obtained doctoral degree at this university. The topic of his doctoral dissertation is very significant in my opinion. It was a study entitled in Polish Zgoda Sandomierska, in the other words, Sandomierz Agreement of 1570. And this was a first monography of this successful episode in Polish Reformation history. Let me say some words on it. Zgoda Sandomierska, or Sandomierz Agreement, it is an understanding between different confessions of Polish Protestants, only Protestants. It was limited to Protestants in the period of the most intensive development of the Reformation. Halecki in this time was a young scholar. He had successful doctoral degree, and he tried to start historical research. And in my opinion, it was very fateful for him to choose the Jagiellonian dynastic union between Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Halecki worked on this problem, preparing a new study, which was entitled Ostatnie lata Świdrygieły, the last years of Świdrygajlo. Under this title, we have a chapter to the history of Polish-Lithuanian Union in the critical period when the possible rupture was real after the death of the king Władysław Jagiełło in 1434. And a study on Świdrygiełło became a subject of the habilitation degree of Halecki, and it was successfully obtained. This degree was successfully obtained in 1916. Let me say that Halecki had only 33 years in this time. The work on Świdrygiełło was successfully adopted and evaluated by professors of the Jagiellonian University, professors of history, and as a habilitant, Halecki had a first lecture, so-called habilitation lecture in December 1916. In this lecture, he developed a program of the future research on Polish-Lithuanian dynastic union, on the large commonwealth of multi-nations, which was organized after the successful union between two states under Jagiellonian dynastic. Why the Jagiellonian union was so important for Halecki? In my opinion, there are many reasons for it. First of all, he was convicted that in the time of reconstitution of Poland, because the First World War permitted to see a possibility of the reconstitution of the Polish state. In this state of matter, it was very important to see historical past, to see historical experience of multinational and multi-confessional state. This was the main reason of Halecki's choice to start the work on the Jagiellonian Union. Secondly, the Jagiellonian Union, in Halecki's view, is the very good example of peaceful expansion of the Western civilization and especially Catholic religion in the Eastern Europe. This is absolutely unique experience without extermination, without discrimination, without military measures. New great territories were converted. People on these territories were converted to Catholic religion, to Western Christendom. And last but not least, for Halecki, it was very important for Halecki to study the problem which had no enough historiographic work in Polish, and not only Polish historiography. Jagiellonian Union was a discussive, sometimes controversial problem in Polish historical thought. Let me say that historians of so-called Kraków school, I mean Professor Wyszyński especially, they criticized Jagiellonian Union, saying that it was not good idea to expand so largely in the Eastern Europe for Poland, because it produced some kind of disintegration of the country, of the Commonwealth in 1917 and especially 18th centuries. For Halecki, the Jagiellonian period was very optimistic. It was very optimistic experience for Polish historical consciousness. It was a time when Poland became a great power in European constellation of powers. And the Jagiellonian Union was also a title of Poland to his place in common history, in the world history, because this was absolutely unimaginable to peacefully expand on pagan territories the Christian confession without any use of force. It is very important for Polish history in Halecki's view. After habilitation, after so successful habilitation, Halecki started the work on the Jagiellonian Union, and he produced and published two volumes under the title in Polish Dzieje Unii Jagiellońskiej, The History of Jagiellonian Union. First volume was published in 1919, second 1 year later. Let me mention that in this time we had a turbulent period in Polish history. We had the war against Soviet invasion of Poland and the battle for Warsaw in summer 1920. Halecki was a candidate just before this work. Halecki was the candidate to the employment at the Jagiellonian University. However, the other candidate was nominated. It was well-known and also renowned historian Władysław Konopczyński. In this time, Halecki was employed not in Kraków, but in Warsaw, at the Warsaw University, which was reorganized and Polonized after the under German occupation during the First World War. In 1916, the Polish Warsaw University started its activity, and Halecki was employed as a chief of the Department of Eastern European History. And he lectured Eastern European history for all interwar era since 1919 to 1939. Halecki became one of the most important specialists in the East European history, in the history of Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and in the history of the Church. But he was not a person of cabinet scholar. He was not a cabinet scholar only. He was very active also in the public activity of the new Poland, in the service for new Poland. Due to the lack of time, I will mention only two episodes in his life, which are very important in my opinion. When the Paris Peace Conference worked in Paris in 1919, Polish government, Polish Ministry for Foreign Affairs decided to send to Paris a number of experts, especially historians, lawyers, geographers, etc., to support the Polish delegation at the peace conference deliberations, and it was the reason to organize so-called Biuro Prac Kongresowych, Bureau of the Congress Works, and Halecki was the Secretary General of this think tank, of this center of experts in the service for Polish delegation, which was presided by Prime Minister Paderewski and Roman Dmowski, the leader of National Democracy. In this center, of course, I mean Biuro Prac Kongresowych, there was not only Halecki, but we can see also many other renowned Polish historians like Stanisław Kuczeba or Władysław Konopczyński, Franciszek Bujak, etc. And second episode, which cannot be neglected, is Halecki's service to the League of Nations. League of Nations, as we know, it was a universal organization promoted by American President Woodrow Wilson and organized after the adoption of the Versailles Peace Treaty with Germany. And officially, League of Nations started its activity at the beginning of 1920, when the Versailles Treaty was ratified by great powers. Halecki entered to the service of the League of Nations in a special domain, I mean intellectual cooperation, so-called intellectual cooperation. This intellectual cooperation was de facto some kind of promotion of the peaceful rapprochement between conflicted nations by culture and science. Culture and science were the means of any attempts to reproach conflicted nations in this time. In the Institute of Intellectual Cooperation, which was placed in the capital of France, in Paris, we had not only Halecki, but also many other eminent personalities. Albert Einstein, philosopher, French philosopher Henri Bergson, and Polish great figure of science, I mean Maria Skłodowska-Curie. This was very important, in my opinion, for Poland to have such personality like Halecki in the international movement for intellectual cooperation. Let me say one word more. I think that for Halecki, League of Nations was a very important institution in the international work. Halecki affirmed the League of Nations program. I mean, especially the idea of the peaceful resolutions of the conflicts. Secondly, international arbitration and collective security. And last but not least, all efforts to promote disarmament between the members of the League of Nations. For Halecki, there was no contradiction between so like idea as League of Nations was and Christian idea of the peace. Christian idea of the peace. This is, in my opinion, the question of cardinal importance. At the at the end of 1920s, Halecki started the work on the new topic in his academic activity. I mean the work on the great problem of the unification of the Church. These efforts leading to the reunification of the Church were very popular in the late medieval era. Christendom was divided after the Eastern Schism in the middle of 11th century, and we had efforts to reunify the Church, to unify the Western Catholic Church and Eastern Orthodox Church under the Roman Pontiff, and with the acceptance of all Eastern traditions like different liturgy and different canon law. This was the general idea of papal vision of the union of the Church. Councils in Lyon, 1274, and Council of Florence, 1439, proclaimed, however unsuccessfully, the union of the Church. Halecki started to work on it, and he prepared a first work on it in French, Empereur de Byzance à Rome, 21 de travail pour l'union des églises. It was published in Warsaw in 1930, in English, Byzantine Emperor in Rome, 20 years of the work for union of the churches. He continued this great problem for the history of the Church until 1956, when in Rome he published a synthesis of this problem. I mean the work from Florence to Brest. It was published in English, and in some years ago it was translated into Polish. This was the synthetical account, synthetical study of the idea of the union of the Church and all diplomatic and political and ecclesiastical efforts to promote successfully this idea in the centuries, in so important centuries for the Church, like 13th century, 14th century, 15th century, etc., and especially 16th century, when the Union of Brest was proclaimed in Poland, in Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. For Halecki, Brest was a significant contribution. Union of Brest was a significant contribution to the idea of the reunification of the Church. He defended always. He always defended this institution, and it was cardinal for him to defend this effort of the King Sigismund III in the realities of the end of 16th century. The next problem in Halecki's life in the interwar era is his contribution to the discussion of historians on the historical identity of the East Central Europe. East Central Europe is typical Halecki's notion, which he introduced to the historical sciences. Let me say that Halecki was against two notions which were very popular in the international historical discussions and international debates in this time on which we are speaking now. First of all, Halecki was against the simple division of Europe into two sectors, Western Europe and Eastern Europe, because it denies the historical identity of these regions which are of special importance for us, for Poland, I mean East Central Europe. Poland is not a country of Eastern Europe. It is a country of East Central Europe. And secondly, Halecki was against a very popular notion of Central Europe. Central Europe is the favorite notion in Bohemia and Hungary, but for Halecki it was not enough to use this notion in explaining the historical identity of our region of Europe. He promoted another notion, East Central Europe. Halecki started this discussion at the Congress, International Congress of Historical Sciences in Brussels in 1923, and continued in the next congresses, and he ended this discussion publishing in New York City in 1915 a book, Limits and Divisions in European History. Limits and Divisions in European History is a very important study for Halecki's contribution to the historiography in the world. In this time when we are speaking, Halecki was very active as an ambassador of Polish historical sciences. I mean especially his activity in international life of historians. I mean all congresses of historical sciences on which I mentioned today. Congress in Brussels, in Oslo 5 years later, Congress in Warsaw 1933, Congress in Zurich 1938, on which he was very active. He represented successfully Polish historical society. Let me say that not only Halecki should be mentioned here, but also two other professors. I mean Bronisław Dębiński and I mean Marceli Handelsman. Bronisław Dębiński was devoted to the idea of promotion of Polish historiography in the world, and Handelsman also. Handelsman belonged not only to the partners of Halecki in this activity, but also he contributed to the discussion on the historical identity of the East Central Europe. In the last years before the catastrophic year 1939, Halecki published a synthesis of the history of Poland. It's firstly in French. In French, he published a study, La Pologne, Histoire de Pologne, essay historique, in 1933, and it was lately translated into other languages, English, German, Italian, etc. The next topic on which I should mention some words in Halecki's life, it was a discussion with the other eminent Polish historian Jan Dąbrowski. Jan Dąbrowski published in 1922 a study on the Crusade of Varna, 1444. Polish king, Władysław I, the king of Poland and Hungary, decided to rupture the armistice with Turkey, and it produced the Battle for Varna and the significant defeat of Polish-Hungarian army. The discussion on the reasons of this action, of this crusade, is very controversial for Polish and not only Polish historian. Dąbrowski condemned the diplomacy of Polish king. He argued that this armistice should have been kept in force, but Halecki argued contradictorily, saying that there was no armistice because due to the lack of sources, it is not easy to explain the realities. And Halecki argued that the decision of the king was not contradictory with the Christian principles, that there was no peace in Szegedin in 1444, and Halecki summarized his views in the work The Crusade of Varna, a discussion of controversial problems, which was published during the Second World War in 1943. The tragic September of 1939 was a turning point in Halecki's life. He was in Switzerland in summer 1939. He tried to combine some kind of holidays with archival research, and when the war was started, he left Switzerland, arriving to Paris. In Paris, he was in the disposition of Polish government, and General Sikorski, Polish Prime Minister, in the emigre government, and Professor Stanisław Kot, renowned historian of culture and one of the most devoted collaborators of Sikorski, decided to request Halecki to be the rector of the Polish University abroad, which started its activity in autumn 1939. But I think that this is a new chapter in Halecki's life, and I will conclude saying 4 remarks. I will conclude my lecture in 4 remarks. First of all, there is a very important heritage of Halecki for today, in the time of the crisis of Christianity, the crisis of the church. For Halecki, there was no Europe without Christianity, without Christian heritage, without Christian civilization. This is the key point of view in Halecki's vision of the history. And it is very important for us today. Secondly, for Halecki, the Intermarium project was very important. Halecki was not arguing in the political domain. Halecki did not use political ideas, but he was devoted to the idea of Intermarium as a large project unifying different nations between Russia and Germany. And this vision was associated with his conception of the East Central Europe. The next remark, Poland, in Halecki's view, was the candidate for the role of the organizing factor in the politics of East Central Europe, in the constellation of powers between Germany and Russia, between these two geopolitical factors. Without Poland, there is no free intermarium there is no free intermarium sphere. And last but not least, the Jagiellonian Commonwealth experienced in the history of Poland, and not only of Poland, as a good example of coexistence of different nations and different confessions in the common state. This is the reason of good memory of Jagiellonian idea in Polish and European history, and I think this is one of the most important views of Professor Halecki as historian of Europe and Poland in the modern era. Thank you very much.